Hello and welcome to the Big League Show. As always, I'm Connor Somerville, joined by Aiden Silliphant. Aiden, how are you doing today, my man?
Doing pretty good, Connor. How are you doing?
I'm good. Excited for our guest today, Kyle Cushman. He's probably the most followed Twitter personality in our program's year. So
Pat still has more than me. Pat still has
Pat
a little
has,
bit more than me. Yeah.
he's
I think
you're
he's like
catching on now.
150 or 200 up, but I'm slowly catching him.
Soon. Um,
Exactly.
Hopefully, with the whole NHL is back stuff, you'll get back up there. But
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, we're happy to have you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, thanks. Yeah, I'm excited to be on here. You guys have been doing some really good stuff recently, and I'm glad you guys chose me as the next one.
No, well,
Awesome. We're,
thank
we're
you for
really
coming.
honored to have you on because we really want to get to know you, and you're a standout in our program. So we're really excited to have you on today.
Yeah, let's dive into things.
All right. Let's start off, as you know, with our little interview portion. When did you first start to get into sports and sort of sports media?
Well, for me, sports has just kind of always been a part of my life, and I'm not like a usual kind of sport media person where I was like the kind of like played sports athlete first. And then when I realized that isn't really a route that I can go down professionally, kind of transition to sport media. My entire life, I've been focused on kind of the more media side of things. So like as young as you can be, like learning to count using NASCAR numbers and all the way on up. I've always been fascinated by just kind of like the more behind the scenes kind of aspect of stuff. So like when I was younger, I didn't dream of being a NASCAR driver. I dreamed of being the NASCAR crew chief. And then as I got older and kind of focus shifted, the thing that really drew me in originally was, I think for most people as well, Jay and Dan watching Sports Center every
Yeah.
morning and just kind of being transfixed by that and what they were doing and the amount of fun they were having and just being able to talk about sports for a living. That was crazy. And so as I got older and my interest in sports only kind of blossomed from basically NASCAR and hockey to everything under the sun, it quickly became the main route that I wanted to go down. And that's as early as like grade 6, 7, going into grade 8 and really knowing that's the route I wanted to go down. Like I already mentioned learning to count using NASCAR numbers, but like in grade 3 and 4, we would have to do daily journals. And every Monday I would do my journal entry as basically a report on what happened in the NASCAR race, to the point where the teachers were like, okay, this is nice, but can we like talk about like what we're doing on weekends in our lives and stuff? And I'm like, this is what I want to do. This is what I
Yeah.
love. And it's always just kind of been something that's been prevalent in my life. And as just getting older and your focus becomes, okay, what do I want to do for a living? It quickly became apparent to me that sport media was the number one thing. And all throughout high school, I made that my goal. Okay, what can I do to put myself in the best situation to do this? And obviously it's worked out so far.
Yeah, clearly you're up and coming for sure in the sport media landscape, and we'll dive into some of the stuff that you've done a little later. But when did you sort of start to find out about the program? Like, has this been something that you've been interested in since you were 12, or did you find out about it similar to a lot of our guests, like as you were considering where to apply?
Yeah, so for me, it actually worked out kind of funny because the first class in grade 9 I had was this kind of like business tech class kind of thing. So just kind of like learning how to use like Microsoft Office stuff and build like a very basic website using some Microsoft programs, that kind of thing. But one of the very first projects that we did in the first couple of weeks was forecasting ahead to just basically learning how to budget kind of thing. So what the project was, it was just like a 1 day simple thing, nothing like serious, but take a university program that you could potentially be interested in, where the city is, and just kind of like very generically budget out what things would be like essentially. And I had never even remotely looked at any university programs at that point, as I'm sure most of the people in that class did. So one Google search later, Sport Media Canada, up comes the Ryerson program. And from that day on, that's been my sole goal. And yeah, it was kind of funny how that worked out in the first couple of weeks, finding out about the program. And yeah, every class decision from that point on was towards putting myself in the best situation to get accepted into that program.
funny enough, my entire journey is very similar to that. So
Nice.
that's kind
Hey, I
of
like it.
weird how that happened. I figured I'd be the only one who actually found this program when I was younger, but it's
Yeah.
interesting how much a Google search can change your path
Right.
in life. What did you sort of like when you were applying? What was the entire process like for you? Was it really nerve-wracking, or were you pretty confident coming in?
Oh, well, so I was very lucky for starters. I come from a fairly small town of about 15,000 people, Strathroy, Ontario represent. But usually in a small town like that, you wouldn't really have access to a lot of things that would put you in place to succeed in a program like sport media, where there's a lot of tech things. And normally most high schools in a small town wouldn't have stuff that would really help you to get to that point. But Strathroy is super, super lucky to have a fantastic person in communications technology in Barry Mayette. He is the sole reason why I'm in this program right now. And I'm sure most school or a lot of schools in like the Toronto area have this kind of thing, but it was very a new idea for me, having a specific class for Comtech and being able to produce a show for Friday morning broadcast and do the news there and have a broadcast to every single TV in the school. And that was a very new concept for me. And we actually had that. And so, yeah, it was really, really cool because as I got to grade 10, grade 11, because there's so much fewer people, it's basically anyone from every grade that wants to be involved in it can be. And so grade 11, second semester was the first time that I really got to be a part of it. I produced the show for that semester. And then after that, I had a talk with Mr. Mayette about what I want to do post-secondary. And so we made the decision that the next year I wouldn't produce, but rather I would put my sole efforts into doing a sports highlight show for the school. And so I had a 2-3 minute block every single Friday morning. And throughout the week, I would skip classes and I would go out and I would film our different games. I would take photos of the games. And then I would go home on my laptop on Premiere Pro. I would put together a 2-3 minute highlight reel. I would commentate over that. And every single Friday morning they would go up. And so having that experience all throughout grade 12 put me in a really confident position because I know that not everyone is afforded that opportunity. And so having the privilege of being able to take advantage of something like that really put me in a position where I felt very confident going into things. And the only real parts that I was a bit iffy on was more the essay writing and that kind of stuff, because that's just kind of a crapshoot. You don't really know what the person reading it is going for. But when you're either showing what you've done or you're talking directly to a person, you can kind of really show what you're made of. And so the only part that I was really kind of iffy on there was like the original essay and then kind of those follow-up things. But yeah, I definitely did feel confident going in, but it was more of a nervous excitement than it was any kind of anxiety or actual nerves.
Talk to me a little bit more about that course, because I can relate to that, because at my high school in Oakville, and I know at Zach Finch's and Jackson Farrow's high school as well in Oakville, we also had a similar program to that where there were TVs in every classroom in the foyer, etc. We had like a control room putting on broadcasts every single week. So tell me a little bit about like your roles that you could do there other than producer. Was there just anchor, director, producer, or were there like other things? And what kind of equipment were you guys using over there?
Yeah, so it was basically there was a main producer. The roles were very loose in terms of what we're used to the roles being now. Basically, producer was the person that checked over everything, kind of helped guide along people, but was essentially the person that would be the barrier of entry between the teachers wanting things done or advertisements being done in the school and having the students make them. So that was kind of that. And then there was assistant producers that would kind of help with that and then do some more hands-on things as you go along throughout the days that the producer can't really do because they're dealing with a bunch of different teachers. Other than that, there was a director, which was very, very loose in terms of it was just kind of a label we gave to somebody else important, but didn't do like any actual directing the day of. It was the directing was basically the person on the switcher, and that was about it. But yeah, other than that, it was basically a lot of rotation, which was really, really good. Right. So every week we would have different people on the switcher, which was just switching between a close-up cam, the 2 wide, and then whatever we had on tape there. Somebody going through the different videos, somebody on audio, and then people switching through Anchor, and then everything else was just kind of going around it. So we had people that strictly just did video stuff that didn't want any part of the actual live production, and then we had people that only did stuff on the live production and wanted everything to do with that. So it was kind of like a very dumbed down version of what we do now, but it was really good to just kind of get that baseline experience. Like for much of my life, I was very, very shy. I didn't like public speaking. I didn't like any of that. And then grade 10 rolled around, and I realized if you want to do this for a living, you're going to have to get over that. And so I'm very thankful for the opportunities that I had, because getting up and reading off of a teleprompter that's super tiny and kind of messes up every single time in front of the entire school, you kind of get over that fear very quickly, and you learn to make fun of yourself, to laugh stuff off, and just have a good time with your really close friends and whatnot, doing a show that you put a lot of effort into. So it's kind of similar to a lot of the different Friday morning shows that you kind of hear of with schools, but obviously being a small town, it's definitely a lot lower quality. Like the cameras and whatnot that we have are old versions donated by our Rogers TV locally here. So definitely not like the super high tech stuff. We have a couple flat screens around the school, but for the most part, all the TVs in the schools are your 1995 looking box TVs, and the video quality is very low, but it doesn't matter at that point. It's just gaining experience, and it's just having a fun time with things. And there are some things that we did that worked really well. Like my sports segment went over really well, because if there's one thing high school students like, it's seeing themselves in front of everybody else. And then there are some things that didn't work, and you know what, that's okay. We tried stuff, but by far doing Saints TV was the best part of high school, and is a major reason why I'm here today.
So are there anybody else in this program who was also in that little sort of TV thing?
Nobody in sport media specifically, but there are 4 people that I can think of off the top of my head that are within 2 or 3 years of me that have gone into media production. So doing the sports stuff was very much a me thing. There are some other people that liked sports that did a little bit, but I put multiple hours in a week into traveling on like team buses to go out and film games, staying 2-3 hours after school to film stuff, taking that footage home, editing it on a Thursday night, commentating it, and then getting it ready for the Friday morning. It was just something that wasn't feasible for a lot of people, but given what I wanted to do and wanting to have that portfolio behind me, it was something that I wanted to make sure I did. But yeah, most of the people are in media production. So there's 2 that are a year, or sorry, there's 1 that's 2 years, there's 1 that's a year ahead, there's 1 in our year, and then there's 1 a year later. So it's kind of like, it almost seems like 1 a year gets in. And I'm excited because there's a first year actually coming in that kind of took the sports segment from me when I graduated. That's getting into sport media, our program or this fall, which is going to be exciting. But yeah, for being a small town, we have quite the pipeline into Ryerson, I got to say.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I think I was like I had 2 people from my school in media production near below me, but as far as I know, I'm the only person who's gone into Ryerson's media stuff.
Nice.
So I guess having that link for you is really important, because you could sort of rely on people above you. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yeah, just having so many people that have done Saints TV before me, and having those recent people that I know and worked with that have gone on to Ryerson made me confident, and kind of breaking down the barrier of, oh my God, it's this massive program, or it's this high profile program that only a select few people get into. It kind of broke down that mystique of it and made it an attainable goal for me. Seeing 2 people that I knew fairly well and worked with over the last couple of years get into the program, that definitely helped out for sure.
Talk to us more now about the application process. You touched on it a little bit, but talk to us about how the interview went. Who did you have for your interview? And also, if you can remember your essay question you had to write, we're always intrigued to see what question you guys got.
So for the interview, I basically searched day and night on every single form of social media to see when people were getting interviews, if people were getting accepted and what kind of things to expect. And I remember I was on Reddit, and I don't remember who actually made the post, but I remember who commented on it saying what to expect, because this past year I looked back in my Reddit DMs and realized it was Richard Coffey. And so that's kind of funny there. But somebody had basically asked in one of the Ryerson subreddits basically what to expect for your sport media interview. And Richard replied to it basically saying there will be some kind of short essay kind of thing, small amount of time, basically one of these kind of answers. And one of the things he said was that they would probably have something along the lines of talk about a sports movie and kind of like its importance, or that kind of thing. And so I was like, check, got that. And I downloaded Icarus on Netflix and watched it for the 4th time on the way up, just to make sure it was fresh in my memory. Went into the interview. Sure enough, that was one of the options. I was like, we're set on this part, and went ahead and did that. I was confident on that part. As for the interview, I had Donna, which is fantastic because she's a lovely, lovely person. And yeah, it was very, very smooth for me. I went in with, like I said before, nervous excitement, and within like 30 seconds of talking, I was very, very comfortable. She was fantastic. And we just kind of had a conversation about myself, what my goals were, who my influences were, and kind of why I wanted to get into sport media. And yeah, it worked out really well. I don't have a usual kind of background in sports like most people do. I grew up around a racing strip rather than a hockey rink, just because my dad drag raced in the summers, and I've never played a game of organized hockey in my life. So in saying that, I was surprised when she said that her husband either knew somebody, I forget exactly what it was, but there was some link between her husband and drag racing, which immediately was fantastic for me, because I was like, the odds of like anybody knowing even remotely anything about drag racing is very minuscule. And I found that out over the years, but having that link immediately was fantastic. It was making that connection. And then with that, I had actually brought one of those journal entries I had mentioned before and tucked it in my suit pocket, just for a little bit out of good luck. And it was one thing I had wrote about drag racing and NASCAR. And so I pulled that out as well. And it was just a really, really good interview. I felt very confident going in. I felt even more confident going out. I don't remember anything else from that day, quite frankly. I kind of like blacked out, went into a zone, but it was a very positive experience for me. I know some people had a more negative one, just from an anxious nervousness, feeling like they butchered the interview kind of thing. But for me, it was super, super positive, and I felt even more confident walking out than I did going in.
You are, I think, the first person I've heard in sport media who's also had an interview with Donna Morrison.
Really?
Which is interesting. Yeah. I haven't heard of anyone else.
I don't know. I feel like I've talked to at least one person, but I can't remember who it was. But yeah, I definitely hear a lot of other names rather than Donna's. But Donna was a fantastic interview. I love it.
Yeah, she was good. She made it very comfortable. And I think that's one of the trends that we've heard throughout our time talking to people in this program is the interviewers try to make you comfortable. And that really helps, as you can see in the Kyle interview and both Aiden and I's interviews and everyone else that we've talked about. Dive into, I guess, well, actually, before we do that, what day, do you remember what day you interviewed? Like approximate time?
It was...
That's hard to remember.
It was the Friday of March break, so whatever date that would have been. Middle March teens. I can't exactly remember the date.
So was that during March break or the week before?
No, it was during March break. It was the Friday of March break because it was like the only time my dad could get off work so that he could bring me up to Toronto, and it worked out that way. But yeah, I remember that it was like one of like the last originally scheduled interview days, which also made me a little bit nervous. But yeah, it was, I can't remember the exact date, but it was the Friday of March break, whatever date that would have been.
Okay. Yeah, I interviewed the Friday March break started.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I would have been the week after that.
The week after. Yeah. Okay. Huh.
I in a recent conversation with Jack Shapiro, he mentioned that he remembers me. He remembers the exact date. He remembers a bunch of stuff from that day. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but I don't remember anything except for uh, walking into the interview and walking out. That was basically all I remember.
Yeah, the only thing I also remember is I think I talked to Patrick Talon.
Oh yeah.
Maybe it might
Yeah,
not have been
I
him.
didn't talk to anyone. I'm
Uh,
gonna be honest. I was like head down, like game face on, like I'm good to go.
What did
Retrospect, I wish
what did
I
you
would have like
wear?
looked
What
around,
did you
but
wear for the
full
interview?
suit,
Full
full
suit.
suit.
Good,
Yes,
good, good.
I was 100% full suit. I walked in and saw some people doing like shirt and tie. I think I only saw one other person doing full suit, and I was like, let's go, already step up, dress to impress. It's pretty simple.
Yeah,
that's
I
pretty
think
cool.
that's what got everyone in. If you're
Yeah,
in a suit, guaranteed you get in.
I mean, it's just an immediate thing that shows your dedication level and your interest level. If you're showing up
Exactly.
in sweats, even if you're showing up in like a shirt and tie, from a male perspective, obviously, like showing up in a suit shows that you're dedicated, because getting a full suit for starters at that age isn't necessarily something that everybody has. But showing up with that dedication immediately is a visual cue when you walk into the interview of being like, okay, this person's serious.
Yeah.
If you walk in and you're wearing like track pants, or if you're just wearing like a dress shirt and just pants or whatever, it doesn't give that same visual cue. It just kind of gives you that step up walking in immediately.
yeah. I think being well dressed is very important for the interview. It really does make you look good. Um,
And
let's dive
obviously not
in.
everybody has that
Yeah,
opportunity to,
yeah.
depending on what your situation is. And that's an important thing to note as well. But if you have the ability to, there's no reason not to.
Basically, just wear your best clothes. Is
Exactly.
probably
Yeah.
our best suggestion. It does give you a good first step, and just try to relate to the interviewer. I think that also helps as well. I haven't asked this of anybody else, but I'm curious to hear,
Ooh.
when did you actually hear that you got in? Do you remember that?
um, it was It was the beginning of May, I believe. I'd seen, just through doing my regular like Twitter stalking and Reddit stalking, that I had seen like 2 or 3 people had been accepted, but I hadn't seen like a massive flood, so I wasn't too worried. But I think it was like the first or second week of May. I can pull it up and get the
My
exact dates and whatnot, but
I got
it was
mine
like,
May 4th. First
yeah,
week of
it,
May.
it would have been right around then as well. It might have been second week of May, but I can't exactly remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think I was mid-May as well. The only reason I asked that is like some people have like random stories of where they
Right.
found out. I was in the middle of a track meet and I just
Oh wow.
randomly checked my phone like,
You were
eh,
competing?
yeah, like I was waiting to do, I think I was in between events, like the 100 and running long jump. And I was bored and checked my phone and decided, why not? Why don't I just see what happened? And
Nice.
I got in and tried to hide my freaking out from everybody. But what has been sort of your favorite aspect of the program in general? Like any courses that have stuck out? Just go free.
It's by far the best thing that I've done is Rams Live. There's nothing that really touches it. I got the taste of doing live sports in grade 12. Um, the Strathroy area producer, which we worked with for a show that we did for the school monthly for the local Rogers TV. He also does did play-by-play for the London Nationals junior C team in London. And there was one date late, or it was in the playoffs, so it would have been late in the year, so like kind of April time. Yeah, that's right, because it was after the interview, but it was before I was accepted. So it was in April, and there was a game that the ringside reporter couldn't do, they had some kind of schedule conflict. And so for some reason he goes, "Hey Kyle, you busy Saturday night?" And I'm like, "No, why?" And he's like, "You're gonna ringside host." And I'm like, "You sure that's a good idea?" And hey, he went with it. I went with it. And it was amazing getting that kind of first experience. Absolutely butchered the opening because I didn't know how to put in an earpiece, and it started to slip out and I didn't hear anything. And then all of a sudden the camera guy points at me and I have like complete script in my mind ready to go, and then slips out, points at me, and it's a gong show off the top. But figured it out from there, figured out how the earpiece works. It went well the rest of the time, but just getting that taste of the live production, just gave me that extra drive to get into things. And once we got the opportunity to do Rams Live, just off and running. First year, I wanted to stay behind the scenes, learn just kind of the other roles. The main thing I did was replay because that was a ton of fun. But this past year, getting in front of the camera for the first time at Ryerson, for Rams Live, that is, and just kind of getting those reps. Like, there's nothing that matches it. It's so much fun. It's everything that I want to do. So Rams Live is definitely the number one thing. And going in hand with that for the courses, it's the production courses for me. There are some other courses that are kind of fun, but those classes are just so awesome. Being able to, with some of your closest peers from your age group and your year, be able to do such creative things, especially this past year, is so cool. Like, we did a game show. Like,
Yeah.
Who gets to do a sports themed game show with $1 million worth of technology at your hands to do, right? Like, who gets to do that? And I got to host that. I grew up at my grandparents' house watching Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, Family Feud, like all those from like 10 through 1, Price is Right. And getting to do that was so much fun. So like, for me, I know it's probably the easy answer, but those production courses are amazing. I love those. But Rams Live is the end all be all for me.
Yeah, we should mention R.I.P. Regis, who recently passed away.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Legendary TV personality who I think he holds the record for most hours on TV, which
That
is
sounds
insane.
very right. Yeah, he did a lot, and one of my favorite cameos and one of my favorite shows in How I Met Your Mother. Very excellent episode there as well. So, yeah, Regis is definitely one of those first ones that you kind of think of when you think of TV host, whether it's Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or elsewhere. But yeah, definitely a sad day when we found out we lost him.
Yeah, let's hard transition away from the sad news and let's talk about what you've sort of done in the industry. And I want to start with, you mentioned your course before Ryerson. Is there anything else that you really think helped you get into the program? Is there anything that you did outside of your school, whether it be a blog or whatever, that you gained a lot of experience from?
Yeah, so there's two main things. So the first thing, and probably the more important thing, going into grade 12, previous in a couple or more than a couple years, probably like 4 or 5 years before my grade 12 year, Strathroy Rogers TV for 1 year had a show with the high school because they want content and they'll put anything on air, which we gladly accepted. But basically, it was 1 episode a month that would air a bunch of times over that month. And it was just kind of like doing random stuff around the school. So interviewing different teachers, coaches, whatever, talking about different things going on around the school. So fast forward the 5 years until I'm entering grade 12, and they renewed that interest, and which was amazing for me. I got to be a part of the original meeting with the area producer who ended up helping me get that one-time gig with the London Nationals there. But that's where it all started there, because for grade 12, in addition to doing all the sports reel highlights and whatnot, missing classes for the better or worse. There was one time where I cut it very close with a math test. That was a fun time. But I had some wonderful teachers that understood where my interests lie and helped me move things around, which was wonderful. But we actually had a TV show on the air monthly on our local Rogers TV station. And so the way that it worked is there was 4 different hosts. Each host got like it was a half-hour show. So each host got in the realm of like 5 to 10 minutes to kind of work with, and then we'd kind of see where all the interviews went with there. But that was awesome because that was the first real taste of actual TV production interviewing that I got. And going in that first week in the summer, kind of going in blind, not knowing what to expect, and red light goes on and you've got one take, don't mess it up. And the first one was definitely very stiff, but as the months went on and we did more and more, it was really fun to do that on a monthly basis. And that's one of the biggest things that I got to do, because you've got one take to do it. You got to prepare with something that you can't really research all that great in terms of Googling and whatnot, like you can for most interviews. yeah, it was really, really fun. Like just getting to talk to different athletes at the school, whether it was somebody that was going to the NCAA for track and field or golf, or talking to some of the coaches that had been at the school for a long time, talking to one of personally my favorite teachers in the school that also did women's soccer, that had done stuff in the London area and had coached Jessie Fleming before she went big time, and getting some of those fun different stories and whatnot was amazing. And I'm really glad I had that experience in grade 12. So that's definitely the big one. But before that, in grade 11, I started writing for a blog online, and that had snowballed into writing fairly regularly. And then in a year's time after that, after kind of building up that base of writing, I moved over to Fansided, and I've been at Fansided for the past couple years, writing off and on, depending on what my schedule is like. But yeah, very, very busy for me, just doing a bunch of different stuff in sport media. But I understand that not everybody has that ability. Not everybody has a local Rogers TV that's desperate for content and contacts the school, and all of a sudden you have 5-6 minutes monthly to do an interview on TV. Like, not everybody has that. I'm sure few people do. But one thing that everybody can do is go online and start doing stuff, whether that's writing, podcasting, doing YouTube videos, whatever it is. And like, yeah, even before that, in like grade 7, 8, I would record using the brand new Elgato I got for my, however old you are, in grade 7 birthday. Would record the franchise mode games that I did, splice those up, did highlight reels, commentated over those, posted them on YouTube. Those are in the depths, only come out every once in a while. But like, yeah, it's just basically do stuff. Like, not everybody has the access to the big technology at schools and whatnot, but everybody has access to the internet, and you can start writing. Like, the only way you get better at stuff is by doing the stuff. And so whether that's writing, podcasting, doing YouTube videos, pretending to host stuff, commentating, whatever, just kind of do that stuff. And I got lucky with my setup and having basically the perfect setup to go into media with the high school that I was at, the teacher I had, and the people I had access to here in Strathroy. But I understand in bigger cities, it's obviously not as closely knit as that, and you don't get those bigger opportunities. But just take things into your own hands. In addition to having the privilege of getting those opportunities, I also took things into my own hands by going out, getting that writing gig, writing regularly in grade 11 and grade 12, whether it was doing those YouTube videos before the schedule got a little bit more compact, and wasn't able to do that as much, but just kind of take things into your own hands there. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that is something that's really notable. I didn't have a TV program at my high school.
Yeah, I'm sure most people don't.
Yeah, I wrote for my school's newspaper. I was like the only sports writer that year.
Exactly.
And they
Just
didn't
take
even
things
have
in your own hands.
Exactly. They didn't even have me covering actual live games. I just talked about whatever I wanted.
Nice.
Or like go and create a blog. WordPress is incredibly easy to use, and you can go there and transition.
I can safely say that there are hundreds of sites, whether it's from smaller sites that kind of DM everybody looking for interest, or whether it's even things like Fansided that are kind of established. If you can write a complete sentence together and not have somebody have to spend 30 minutes editing it, you'll probably be accepted into a bunch of different places. So the least you can do is apply. If you don't want to and you kind of want to do your own thing, go ahead and make your own site. But I can safely say that just applying, I never thought that I had a shot at getting into Last Word on Sports or after that Fansided. But you'd be surprised how much they want content creators and people that write on a regular basis. They cycle through a lot of people that get excited the first time. They write a couple times in a month span and then don't do it anymore because they realize it's actually hard work. If you're dedicated and you want to do stuff, they'll gladly accept you along. And all of a sudden you have that opportunity to have that higher profile, helps you build your profile up on different social medias, helps bring that presence up, which in turn brings your readership up. And it's just kind of that cycle that goes along until you have a decent follower base that can help you in the future.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things is don't be afraid to reach out to people. As you've said,
exactly.
I applied last summer to the Staff and Graph podcast to edit for them, and they took me on, and it was 36 episodes, and now they're going on a bit of a break. So hopefully they continue that eventually. But you never know the opportunities that can come from just applying or messaging someone about an opportunity or following someone even. you can really create a lot of good connections. And if you want to reach out to people, Kyle, Aiden, and I are all happy to talk to you about sport media, or if you want to get into the industry or anything like that, reach out to us. We want to talk to you. We love to see people getting interested in this industry, and we love making connections. So
yeah, going along with that, over like the past couple months and kind of Ryerson doing, or more than a couple months now, but sorry, I'm still in like kind of March brain for my timeline of what school is. But over the past like 6 months, I guess it is now, geez. I had a couple different prospective sport media applicants message me on Instagram after finding stuff through Twitter, LinkedIn, or wherever that I've done, seeing that I'm in the program, seeing that I'm actively doing stuff, and basically being like, hey, what do I need to do to get into this program? Essentially, like, what can I expect? And I can safely say that anybody in the program, if they get that DM, one, they'll have a smile on their face, and two, they'll gladly give you a long response, basically explaining anything and everything you could ever want. And there's no harm in just asking. That's where a lot of things start, whether it's making connections, getting a gig somewhere. Like it just kind of works like that.
Yeah, like Connor said, like this industry is all about connections, and you just got to know people. And sometimes you luck out if you run into someone or meet someone and they have a job for you. You just got to go for it. I think that's what Harb said in year one, especially. Like if someone offers you a job, run with it right away. Get out of the class right away and just go on for the job. So seriously, it's good that you're doing that. And I got one more question for you. Where do you see yourself working in the future?
Whoever gives me a job. I like some different aspects of stuff. Like I mentioned, I like doing the replay stuff. I've got a taste of doing the producer stuff. I like that as well, but it's always been my goal. It's my goal now. It'll be my goal forever. It's being in front of the camera, specifically in like a hosting role. But I really don't care if I'm in front of the camera. I don't care who's giving me the job. I don't care what I'm covering. I'll gladly do it. And so I don't really like having those set, like I want to work for this, doing this role by this time, just because if you don't meet any of those by that time, you'll be in a pretty crappy place mentally. But just having those kind of wide expectations of where I want to go and just kind of seeing where it takes me, because a lot of people have kind of those expectations where they go, and by the time they end up where they are, it's a far ways off from where they expected as well. So it's just kind of keeping things open, but I definitely want to be in front of the camera. I don't know where that's going to end up, but that's basically where my goals and interests lie.
Yeah, and we'll get into your KMN stuff immediately after this break. All right, so let's dive into everything you've done at Ryerson in terms of extracurricular stuff. I assume you've continued the fan-sided writing, but other than the fan-sided stuff, what have you kept doing while at Ryerson that hasn't been affiliated to Ryerson?
The main thing has been kind of the fan-sided writing outside of Ryerson. At this point, everything kind of within everything that I've done has kind of been kind of associated with Ryerson, at least somewhat. So the main thing is the Spirit Live stuff I've done, which I don't know if you count that as Ryerson stuff. It's kind of extracurricular, but essentially that's the main thing I've done. And so since day one, I've been doing the KMN show with Matt Mallard and Nigel Gobekjian, and that was a nice kind of happy accident that happened, and just kind of the coincidence of us being put together in the same orientation group and having similar interests, and immediately hitting off a friendship, and just kind of going from there. And first class a week later, getting the kind of tip off that, hey, there's this thing called Spirit Live. You get 50 minutes to talk about whatever the hell you want. Go ahead and sign up. And Matt in our group chat afterwards goes, yeah, we're definitely doing this. And I'm like, sign me up. I'm good. And off we were. It was definitely interesting starting off a radio show with two guys that you've known for 3 weeks and diving into things with something that was brand new for all of you. But I love it. It's super fun creating different stuff every single week, whether it's kind of like your more regular, just talking about storylines, or whether it's some of our more extravagant game show stuff that we've done. That's been super fun. And just kind of going along with that, I have the interest of basically doing as much as I can whenever. So I'm the madman that decided to do 2 and then 3 different radio shows. And so that originally started with doing a soccer show with Nigel, as well as Kyle Watson and Simon Kishchuk, which then this past year we brought back, or Kyle brought that back with Daniel Janikis, and then he asked myself to be on that as well. But the main thing that I've done in addition to the K-Man show is more recently this past year, the Green Flag with Lucas Wacker. And that's awesome because he's about the only person that I know that follows NASCAR as closely as I do. And I love it because for most of my life, I haven't really had anybody to talk to about NASCAR. And now I do. So that's fantastic. And every single week we're talking an hour and a half, 2 hours on 1 or 2 races, which is kind of crazy, but hey, you know what? I'm loving it. And that's been really fun. And it was actually kind of funny. It was kind of similar in vein to how the K-Man show started and kind of getting that tip off in that sound production lecture. I think it was the second week. I just kind of sat down and it happened to be beside Lucas, and as I'm setting up my laptop and whatnot, I look over and I see him like a Kyle Busch post on Instagram, and I'm like, you're cheering for the wrong guy. And he kind of perks up and he's like, you watch NASCAR? And I'm like, hell yeah, I watch NASCAR. I've watched NASCAR my entire damn life. What do you think? And that kind of kicked off a friendship there, liking 2 guys that are rivals, and that's blossomed into a really close friendship and a pretty fun show, I must say. And yeah, those are the main 2 that I've done, kind of in addition to the Ryerson stuff of doing Rams lives, doing stuff in class, that kind of thing, and then doing the writing outside of it. The YouTube stuff kind of got lost in the dust back in the depths of grade 10 as that kind of went along. But that's okay because I transitioned into doing the same thing except about real sports. So I'm okay leaving that in the past.
So I take it you have all of your creative practice hours then?
Well, I probably do. I just haven't tallied any of them up because I'm stupid and lazy like that.
Okay, I was going to ask you how you submit them because I have no idea. And I don't think anyone
knows. That's a good question.
I know.
That's a good question. I'm just hoping that I can retroactively go back and be like, okay, I've done this many Rams lives. Let's tally up those. I did a double overtime game. That's got to count as double and go. I can't really do the Spirit Live stuff anymore because they have a pretty strict deadline, but that's okay. Yeah. I've done quite a bit, to say the least, but that's okay because I don't really see it as taking time out to volunteer and do something for school. I see it as genuinely something that I find fun, that I enjoy doing, and happens to also work out because I need it to graduate as well. But like if I had the option, and this is kind of like just myself, I know most people aren't like this, but if I have the option of going out and going to a party on a Friday night or going and doing a Rams live game, I'm the person that picks the Rams live game. Like I'm not a social butterfly in terms of I like partying, I like doing all this. I like staying at home watching sports, doing whatever. And if I get to stay at home, watch sports, except it's not at home, it's at the arena, and I get to watch the game live and I get to talk about it with people that I like that's a better situation for me. I know most people aren't like that. Most people like their weekends, they like to party and whatnot, but that's just not me, and that's okay.
Yeah, and that's what you really get in this program is not everybody is the same. You know, we're both not exactly the most social, but someone like Zach Finch or Kyle Watson or Daniel may be more social than us. So you really get a good balance of that when you come into Ryerson. Let's quickly touch on how you've adapted to things in COVID. What is sort of the new stuff? You mentioned the green flag. How have you sort of adapted your content to what's currently happening in today's society?
Yeah, well, the first and foremost, in terms of the writing and fan-sided stuff, you went from being able to actively write about what's going on in hockey to kind of have to create things to write about. And I kind of struggled with that early on, kind of figuring out what I want to write about, because usually my focus lies with the Marlies or prospects, that kind of thing. That's where most of my interests lie, and that's kind of the niche that I've made out for myself. But in having that gap of stuff, I really didn't know what I wanted to go with, and I kind of took a lot of time off, as I did throughout the school year as well, and kind of brainstorming what I wanted to do. And I finally came back. I started doing these trade history things between the Leafs and the different franchises in the NHL, and I've made it through 4 or 5 so far. They're pretty lengthy tasks to do, but just kind of looking at all the trades that they've made in their history and kind of picking out the best one or the biggest one, the most recent, the first one, which has been a really fun one to do, and then the biggest deal, which usually is not in the Leafs' favor, but that's okay. Those have been really fun to do, and just kind of picking out different news items to write about and when things do come up, because people are, for the most, not really anymore because hockey's coming back, but during that break, any kind of news was like, give me that. And with the Marlies and the Growlers as well, having their seasons canceled and having players sign elsewhere, generated some interest there. But the main thing has been pivoting from having those awesome Spirit Live studios to doing things over Zoom, as you guys know. And it's actually made things pretty interesting because I've always, with the radio shows that I've done, I've always been stuck in that 50-minute time limit, and having that expanded out to however long you want to talk, and having the editing capabilities, obviously not the audio quality by any means, but just kind of expanding that and expanding how long you want to talk has been fun. Recently, we've done the Green Flag Instagram page as well, so starting to do some extra clips and whatnot that I've been kind of eyeing up doing for a long time there as well. But one fun thing that I actually got to do COVID related or because of COVID was a few weeks ago, Ryerson did their first test for remote production classes. And so I actually got to be a part of that, which was really fun. Got to have a full 3-screen setup, have like TeamViewer on the laptop, have my phone set up on a pile of 12 books, sending a video and audio back to them, having an iPad set up for intercom. That was really cool to do. My internet kind of gave out halfway in, so that was the end product isn't as flush as I would have liked it to have been. I'm frozen for much of it, and you just kind of hear my voice, but just kind of getting to experience some of that, get kind of the taste behind the scenes of those kind of things, and kind of being on like a equal level as everybody else in the industry, because all of a sudden everybody doesn't have access to those things and everything is over Zoom, and everybody is trying to create different storylines to write about and whatnot. So it's been cool to see how everybody's pivoted and what's been successful, what hasn't, and personally just kind of getting into another groove with Lucas and doing the Green Flag a bunch, and now that hockey's back, starting to do the K-Men show again.
All right. I think we've heard a lot. You're clearly one of the more experienced members of sport media, especially coming into the program. But let's get some of your actual sports takes, and we'll see if it's just as expansive as
I'm ready for this.
The entirety of your history in sport media. And we'll start with your expertise and something Aiden and I know absolutely nothing about, NASCAR. Obviously, you do that Green Flag show with Lucas, so I'm just going to ask you a couple questions, and
go for it.
We'll predict this weekend's NASCAR.
You got questions, Connor? How did you research these questions?
Here we go.
That's the thing, Aiden, is you don't research and you make them up on the
Oh, gotcha. Okay. I wouldn't even know where to look for this stuff.
Google is your friend.
I guess, yeah.
One thing you should know in sport media is Google is your best friend. Trust me.
Yes.
In any doesn't even matter if you're in a program. Google is your best friend no matter what.
Okay, right. Let's do this. Here we go.
Who is the racer to watch this weekend?
Okay, the person to watch this weekend. Well, there's a couple of different routes that you can go. You can kind of go the kind of the guy that you expect to win, or some of the more underdog guys. But I'm going to give you, because you guys have no knowledge whatsoever, I'm going to give you the most likely guy to win, and that's Kevin Harvick. He leads the point standings this season. He's been the most consistent. It's been him and Denny Hamlin up at the top competing for wins week in, week out. And he's won at New Hampshire the last 2 times they've been here the last 2 seasons. So he's definitely the favorite to win this weekend. I have him in my fantasy lineup. Lucas is a crazy man and doesn't have him in his fantasy lineup. I don't know what he's going with there. But Kevin Harvick, he's been dominant all season long. He's won both of the races the last 2 times they've been here. So he's definitely the main guy to watch for. There's a couple other interesting guys further back in the field. I look at somebody like Matt DiBenedetto, who in his first time in competitive equipment here last year finished top 5. That could be an interesting dark horse pick. But at the top of the field, it's Kevin Harvick and then everybody else.
All right. That is one of the only names I've actually heard, apart from Bubba Wallace.
True. I know that name.
Yeah, I think everybody knows that name for good reason at this point.
Yes.
Where do you see Bubba Wallace finishing? Because he's the only other racer in his name I know.
Bubba Wallace is an interesting one because this year the team has been significantly improved. Last year, that team was a 25th kind of place car. Not any of Bubba Wallace's own doing. It's just the equipment that they had and the money that they had didn't match up with the rest of the field, which is something that you see a lot in motorsports. It's not like a lot of other sports where it's skill-based entirely. There's a lot that goes into the equipment that you have and then your actual ability. Bubba Wallace is a very good race car driver. He's won in each of the lower series, but he hasn't had that opportunity to have really high-end equipment in NASCAR or in the Cup Series yet. But this year they've kind of turned things around. They've gone from like a 25th, 26th place car up to competing in the top 20 most of the time. So it's been interesting. New Hampshire is kind of similar to Martinsville, which is a track that Bubba Wallace has been very good at. So I would look for him to finish in 15th to 20th place, and if it's a good day, getting a top 15 finish.
All right, and predict how many wrecks there are going to be.
New Hampshire is a track that doesn't really bring in a lot of crashes just because of the size of it. And it's one of the slower tracks in terms of it being relatively small and the straights aren't super huge. So I'll say, do you want cautions or actual crashes?
We'll go both.
Okay, so at minimum, there's 2 cautions for the 2 stages. So I'll say that there's 6 cautions and 3 crashes. We'll go
All
with
right. So you've heard it here first. If you want to watch this weekend's race for the crashes, don't.
Yes, this weekend is not a weekend to watch for the crashes. That's coming up in a few weeks. The regular season finales at a super speedway in Daytona. If you want to watch for wrecks, that's your time to watch.
All right. And before we move on from NASCAR, give us sort of the idea of how the entire racing system works, because I'm sort of familiar with the way the F1 works. I don't know how similar it is. And convince the listeners why they should watch NASCAR.
So in terms of like how the championship is decided, is that what you're going for?
Yeah.
Okay, so NASCAR is kind of weird because it's not like a usual motorsports format where it's a season-long thing. You accumulate points week in, week out, and at the end of the season, the champion is the person who has accumulated the most points. That's what it was for a long time. That's not what it is anymore. We have a regular season and then a playoff. So the regular season, 26 races, the playoff, 10 races. And so basically how it goes is the top 6, or if you win in any of the first 26 races, you're automatically locked into the playoffs. And that's been a big thing this year because 2 drivers currently outside the top 16 in points have won races already, and recently in Cole Custer and Austin Dillon. So there's 16 drivers that make the playoffs. It's either the top 16 in points or the winners plus the next points finishers to reach to 16. So this year, for example, because we have 2 people outside the top 16 right now that have won in points, it's essentially the top 14 in points plus 2 guys outside of that, which is throwing a big wrench into things because some guys that looked pretty comfortable to make the playoffs all of a sudden almost need a win at this point. So once you get there, it's a very familiar kind of playoff format where every 3 races, a certain amount of cars are eliminated until you get to the final race. This year, for the first time at Phoenix Raceway, and in that race, there's 4 guys that can win the championship, and whoever finishes highest of those guys wins the championship. So it's a system that is very unlike Formula One, and where Formula One is very traditional format. In NASCAR, it's much more of a new age, kind of gimmicky format that kind of makes the entertainment value of each race in the regular season a little bit less. But once you get into the playoffs, each race means so much. It's almost necessary viewing if you want to pay attention to the championship race. And so in terms of giving my pitch to watch NASCAR, it's as simple as give it a chance. I can understand the barrier of entry can be pretty massive because most people don't have the background like I do of growing up around cars, growing up around a racetrack. And that's something that can be difficult to overcome for a lot of people because racing is such a foreign idea because it costs so much money and it's just something that's never really been prevalent, especially in Canadian society. In our area, it's surprisingly prevalent. There's a racetrack pretty close by. The only Canadian crew chief to win a NASCAR championship went to my high school, so it's a pretty big thing around my area. But in Canada as a whole, it's not very big. In the United States, on the other hand, it's pretty big. It's not as big as it used to be in the early 2000s, but it's still a pretty big enterprise. So what I would simply say is just give it a shot. Don't just watch one race and kind of make up your mind. Don't watch 10 laps and make up your mind. Give it a legitimate shot. Give it a couple races. Give it 3 races, however long you want to truck it out for. But just know what to watch for. It's kind of similar in vein to baseball, where it's kind of slow treading for a lot of it. It's kind of the semantics of it until you get to like the 7th, 8th, 9th innings, and that's when the heat really gets turned up, right? In NASCAR, it's kind of the same thing. The first 80% of the race is just people trying to get through to the final 20%, and then that's when things get kicked into high gear, whether it's people competing for the race lead, competing for the win, late race restarts, which are mayhem and some of the best things in sports, in my opinion. It's just kind of giving it that shot, not going in with the pessimism of like, okay, this is NASCAR, all they do is turn left, this is boring kind of thing. If you realize the amount of skill that it takes to sit in a race car that's cooking at 130 degrees Fahrenheit for 4 hours, turn that many laps, have that much precision to go that fast in those corners, is something that I think a lot of people underrate in terms of the kind of athlete that you need, the terms of durability that you need, the amount of skill that it takes to run an oval road or an oval race, and just kind of go in with that open mind of, okay, let's see what this is. I know that it's not for everybody, just like how hockey isn't for everybody, like how baseball isn't for everybody. I don't expect everyone to be a racing fan, but if you're interested in getting into it, just kind of give it that open-minded shot. I wouldn't recommend New Hampshire as your first race to start at. I'll say that very much. But kind of go in with that open mind of, let's see how this is. If I like it, I like it. If I don't, oh well.
You know
Okay,
what?
so sorry, go ahead.
I guess so. I actually just watched Ford versus Ferrari not too long ago, and that was actually pretty good. And maybe that movie could influence someone to watch NASCAR, because like it's a really good movie, good actors in it, Matt Damon and Christian Bale, and the story's great. And I think if you want to get into NASCAR and you want some inspiration, just watch that movie. And even it might have inspired me a little bit too.
Yeah, I think any kind of major motorsports thing can get you interested in multiple different forms. And I know that since Ford versus Ferrari's come out, I've paid a little bit more attention to some of the endurance racing. Obviously, we didn't get a Le Mans this year, unfortunately, but I watched a bunch of the virtual Le Mans that they did on some of the sim racing platforms, and just kind of watching a little bit more IMSA, which is very interesting series where they have 4 different classes of cars on the track at the same time going around a road course, which can cause mayhem, to say the least, when you've got a very fast LMP1 car trying to pass a still fast but nowhere near as fast GTR or something like that. And so any kind of major motorsports on the big screen, whether you look back and it's like Talladega Nights, or you go more recently in something more serious in Ford versus Ferrari, or even before that, something like Rush, the Formula One movie about James Hunt and Niki Lauda. And you can look at any of those and you can probably tie a lot of people getting interested in motorsports to those movies. And it kind of makes sense when it's not necessarily something that's considered one of the big sports. When you look at sports, most people are looking at probably the big 3 plus hockey, but we'll be nice. We'll say the big 4. And racing is kind of left out of that. And it takes something like a major movie picture or something to that effect to get people spark that interest. And hey, anytime there's a major thing involving motorsports, I'm here for it. I will gladly accept any new fans. There is no stigmatism. There's nothing against new fans coming into NASCAR. We're open arms. It's not like some of the other sports where new fans come in and the established fan bases kind of ridicule those new fans. NASCAR welcomes in people with open arms, and there's a lot of great ways to get into it, whether it's jumping right in and watching the sports. There's some fantastic content creators on YouTube that do some really good things. kind of giving the history of NASCAR, whether it's just simply race recaps or going back and looking at different things that have happened in NASCAR's past. There's some great stuff that you can consume on YouTube there. And yeah, it's just kind of, I understand it's not for everybody, but it's a sport that if you can get into it, it's amazing. And just give it a shot, essentially. And whether it is something like one of those movies, like we've mentioned, that gets you interested, or whether it's just kind of an organic thing and you kind of jump into it from there, I don't care how you get into it, but if you're into it, welcome on in.
All right. And last thing on NASCAR, if there's one race for somebody to start watching NASCAR, which one is it?
Quintessential NASCAR. Okay, what do you two think when you think of NASCAR? What is kind of the image that pops into your mind?
Going very fast. Yeah, race car. Going very fast, massive wrecks, and very close finishes probably. And so very long
checkered flag. Checkered flag is what
that's what I would consider. That's what I would consider quintessential NASCAR too, because it's the only motorsport that has close racing like that. Because most race cars are made to be fast and not to make contact, whereas NASCAR is made to be fast and you can beat and bang the hell out of it. It's very unlike any other motorsport. You look at Formula One, if you make any contact with that car, the car is probably toast. You look at IndyCar, you make any kind of contact, damage the front wing, anything like that, your car's toast. In NASCAR, you can beat and bang the hell out of it and you can still run the race. And so because of that, you get things like super speedway racing, which is very unique to NASCAR. And that's where I would start with NASCAR. If you're going to jump into something, it's the kind of racing that has the most action start to finish because of the draft. Everybody needs to be nose to tail constantly to go fast. And because of that, it's exciting all the way through because you're on the edge of, you never know when somebody can make a mistake and all of a sudden there's a massive wreck. And that's where the massive wrecks do happen in the super speedway races because the racing is so close because of the draft. And if somebody makes one mistake, it's likely bringing 4 or 5 others minimum into it. And because of the close racing, it breeds close finishes as well. So if I were to start anywhere, I would check out some of the super speedway races. You can look online on YouTube. I believe you can probably find, if not the full race, you can watch the race highlights of the most recent Talladega race. That race was excellent. Upcoming in a few weeks' time, the regular season finale is at Daytona. First time that they're doing the regular season finale at a super speedway race, which is very interesting as well because of the draft. It's known as the great equalizer, where any car in the field can come through and win regardless of the level of equipment that you have as well. So there's wild card finishes in terms of winners, close racing, close finishes, and big wrecks. So if I were to start anywhere, I'd check out some of the super speedway racing and then kind of go from there.
All right. That sounds good. You want more NASCAR talk? Go and check out the Green Flag with Kyle and Lucas.
Where can they find that at?
Yeah. We are on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, and Spotify. And if you want to check out some of the awesome graphics that Lucas makes and some of the clips from the show, you can check out the Instagram page, nice and simple, at The Green Flag.
All right. We'll probably link all his stuff down below in the YouTube video because we can't do it on Anchor, I believe, unfortunately. But yeah, if you want to get any of his stuff, go to YouTube. It'll all be there. Let's dive into the rest of sports. Why don't we start with the NFL? Because Aiden hasn't talked very much because I've sort of taken this a little bit by the reins. So let's get a little of his thoughts. There's a bit of a trade. And by, I mean, well, a bit, I mean a huge trade. Jamal Adams finally got dealt from the New York Jets. The full trade was Jamal Adams and a 4th-round pick to Seattle in exchange for a 2021 first, a 2022 first, 2021 third, and safety Brian McDougal. So, for people who actually know about football, which is not me, what is this? How big is this trade, and what does this mean for Seattle and for the Jets?
Well, first and foremost, this trade is huge. Jamal Adams has been rumored to get traded for, the past few months now. He's been demanding a trade. He trade requested, obviously, to leave the Jets. And in my opinion, I am really, really shocked that the Jets got so much in return for him. They got 2 first-round picks. from a Seattle team that has barely squeaked into the playoff spot the past 3 seasons. I know that getting a guy like Adams, who's only 24, probably the best safety in the league, well, top 3, I would say. It's going to help them make the playoffs and compete for a Super Bowl again. But still, in the NFL, a first-round pick is a pretty big deal. And then 2 of them especially, those are 2 starting players. So, I mean, it's a lot to give up. Plus, Adams isn't getting his full payday yet. He is still waiting to get a new contract. So Seattle's going to give him probably the biggest contract for a safety in the NFL. I don't know if I would do that just because Adams is still young, and there has been rumors that he doesn't get along with coaches very well. So it's risky for Seattle, but if you look at the Seahawks right now, they're in win now mode. They don't want to waste any more years for Russell Wilson. They want to win now. So I'd expect them to be in the running for the Super Bowl in the next 2-3 years for sure. And then we'll see what happens after that. But I do think that those first round picks might bite them moving forward, to be honest. I think it's a lot to give up. I don't know if Kyle has any take on the trade.
Yeah, I really like this trade for the Seahawks, actually. It kind of brings back that kind of Legion of Boom kind of thing that you think of, that you associate with the Seahawks. But the big thing for me is the win now that you mentioned. And you've got a premier quarterback in Russell Wilson in his prime right now. You don't want to be like some of the other teams and kind of waste those prime years like we've seen a lot of teams do. And going out and paying that price for Jamal Adams is huge because that really helps out that defense. They haven't been all that great with their first round picks either, to be honest. And you kind of save that cap space in the short term as well with Jamal Adams. As you mentioned, he hasn't got that big payday yet. Obviously, you have to do that coming up shortly. But at least in the short term, you save a little bit of cap space. You get a fantastic player in your safety. Now, if he actually meshes well with the team, we'll see. But at least on paper, I think this is a really solid move for Seattle.
So how does this trade look for the Jets then? Because they did get quite the haul.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's a big win for the Jets, in my opinion. He wanted out, and, I thought they were going to get a first and maybe a second. I didn't think they would get 2 firsts, so I think it's a big win for the Jets. There's not really too much else to say. Like, it's a solid haul for the Jets that they got in return.
Yeah, it's obviously disappointing to lose a player the caliber of Jamal Adams after requesting a trade, but to be able to get that much value, as you said, for a player that had requested a trade so publicly and so publicly wanted out, that's very good business on their part. Now, what they do with those picks is what's going to make or break the trade. Where those picks lie will also impact things, but yeah, very good for the Jets as well. I think it's a trade that works out well for both parties, given all the circumstances surrounding it.
And how long until Le'Veon Bell requests a trade?
Oh boy. I don't know if I see that, to be honest. I don't know. I think he might stick around. I think he likes the idea of playing in New York. And I think, there's no competition for running backs there. So he's like the clear number 1. He's going to be there for a while and he's getting paid. So maybe closer to the end of his career potentially, or closer to the end of his contract. But, maybe with these first round picks, the Jets can turn it around.
I don't know. I'm of the opinion of don't give up assets for running backs. They're very much readily available around the league, and I feel like somebody like Le'Veon Bell that kind of has that name attached to him, but doesn't necessarily have the premier skill like he necessarily used to. I mean, like, he's still a very good player, but I just get with the new age NFL and with more and more teams adapting analytics and realizing that you probably shouldn't be paying running backs and you probably shouldn't be using high picks on running backs because they are so readily available and there's not a whole lot of difference between them. I don't know if we really see those kind of situations anymore. Of course, we have Raheem Mostert right now and that kind of situation that's playing out, but we'll see how that goes. I don't really see anything happening with Bell, but who knows? It's Le'Veon Bell. Tomorrow we could hear something.
Yeah, maybe.
Who knows? Let's go from that trade to some positive news for everyone but the NFL. In Laurent Duvernay-Tardif. He's Canadian from Quebec. He has opted out of the NFL season to, I believe, stay at the retirement or care home that he started volunteering at because I don't believe he has his full doctorate yet, but he has
No,
his
he does.
degree. He does? I thought he
Yeah,
still has to do the.
I don't know, but he has the doctor label at least.
Okay, yeah. I think he still has to do his placement. So he's not officially a
That
doctor
sounds
yet.
right. Yeah.
But he is either way very smart.
Yeah.
And be doing some very good things I'm not sure if it's a retirement residence or a long-term care facility, but he's opted out, and that's massive news for Kansas City because they lose a very, very good player, and as they hope to repeat if the NFL season happens. But yeah, what do you guys sort of think of him opting out before we quickly wrap up because we only have 4 minutes left on the Zoom call and we can hit the rest of sports?
I don't really have, too big of an opinion on it. Like you can't really blame anyone for opting out, like we've said repeatedly on the show. So good for him, honestly, for making a stand like that. And Kansas City is gonna miss him, but I think Kansas City can still repeat though without him.
Yeah, I still think KC is good, but it's awesome to see somebody that has that background kind of stick with what actually matters in the world right now. And football is fun, but it's nowhere near as important as what he's doing outside of football right now. And given how vocal he's been about everything involving his process at McGill and whatnot, and getting continuing his education while playing in the NFL has been a big thing that he's kind of broadcast to everybody, which has been really interesting to see because we don't see that a lot, especially in the NFL. And it's been really good to see him take that stand and make the correct choice in opting out of the season and continuing helping where his services are most needed, which is where he is now rather than the football field. And personally, I tweeted this out, but I think that making this decision and the Super Bowl and everything that he's done in his career to this point and what he will done and what he will do in the future, he seems like a shoo-in for the Order of Canada once he retires.
I have to agree. I've seen a lot of people say that, or Lou Marsh award as well, but I think Lou Marsh
is going to be tough because Davies had quite the year. Yeah.
Davies has had a very good season, especially if Bayern do well in Champions League, which is upcoming, but we'll touch on soccer after the break. But to wrap up, Duvernay-Tardif, even though you'll never see this, thank you. We need people like you in society. And yeah, let's talk CPL and soccer after this little break. All right, now let's hit the CPL because they came out with their return to play plan today. Basically, the gist of it is they are going to PEI, which they're taking the bubble very literally in that they're staying on an island. So I guess that's a good thing, especially considering Canada has like very, very few cases. They'll have an opening group stage of 28 games where every team will play the other team once. Then top 4 teams will advance to a round robin, and then they'll do a round robin tournament, finish it with a knockout and champion, which ultimately amounts to 35 games. What do you guys think about this format? We'll start with you, Kyle, because Aiden is only finding about this now. What do you sort of think about this whole format?
I mean, it's probably the best that they could really do with what they're working with. You can't really feasibly do a full season in a bubble. We're seeing the MLB try and do a full season outside of a bubble, and it's quickly going down the drain. But you know what? I don't mind it. The play each team once, top 4 move on. It's basically getting back to the kind of roots of simple like sports. It's play each other once, whoever's the best moves on kind of thing. I definitely like it. I kind of feel bad for Atletico Ottawa because your first game action is this tournament, which is definitely not ideal. But no, I'm excited. I've been waiting for CPL to finally release something in terms of being back, and the fact that they're releasing this now and the tournament's starting in a week and a half, 2 weeks. I'm excited. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, I believe kickoff is August 13th. So that's like almost exactly 2 weeks from now.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I think it's good that CPL is getting back up and running. It's basically starting like 2 days after MLS finishes. So they're going to
Wow,
get like all of the
Good
North
timing on
American,
that part. Yeah.
yeah,
that's very good.
all of the North American audience, because we all know that the USL is destined to fail after they're trying to play without a bubble, because why the MLB did so well, why don't they try it? Yeah, I don't know. We'll get into the MLB a little later because the Miami Marlins are not in a good place right now. Yeah, I guess there isn't really much to say to the CPL stuff. It's just good that they finally came out with it and they're getting back to playing. Other stuff that was announced around soccer, World Cup qualifying in CONCACAF was announced, and it's very confusing. And they're planning on playing games in Canada, which, okay, you're going to have to quarantine those teams for 2 weeks, though. Probably, maybe. We don't really know what's going to happen. I don't think CONCACAF even knows what's going to happen. But it's given Canada a pretty good shot at qualifying. Right now, this format is sort of, there's going to be like 6 groups, and like the top 6 teams that aren't in the little 4-team best of or 6-team best of, which Canada was just on the outside of, are going to be the top of each group, which will give Canada a really good shot at getting into Qatar 2022, even if that may not be the best thing in the world. And if that even happens, because Qatar has used slave labor. But we will ignore that fact and talk about Ayo Akinola, because I do want to touch on him and get your thoughts on where you think Ayo Akinola is going to play national soccer.
I think that he's going to play for the United States. I feel like if you look at Canada's depth chart and you see the amount of talent up front and you see Jonathan David there specifically in your Ayo Akinola, given that Canada hasn't really expressed a ton of interest to this point, and you're kind of only expressing interest after a breakout performance at the MLS's back tournament rather than persistent kind of scouting or recruiting like we've seen with some other guys. I think that he's probably more likely to stick with the U.S. camp because that's what he's been in most recently. And I definitely think that that's probably the route he goes in. Now, I'll gladly be wrong. I'll gladly take another top talent striker in the system because you can never have enough of those. But as it stands right now, I do think he stays with the United States.
I tend to disagree because I look at the amount of, I wrote an article on this for MLS Multiplex, which is the fan-sided site I write for.
Good plug.
And as I get a phone call, which somehow links to my computer for no reason, I think with the amount of depth the U.S. has at striker in Gassi Zardes, Josie Altidore, we forget about Timothy Weah, but he's very prominent. You look at other potential players there, like Pulisic could potentially play up top. You've got Josh Sargent as well, who's another striker. I think there's a lot of very quality depth up top for the U.S., and I don't think that necessarily exists as much with Canada. When you look at, they really only have like Teisho Akindele, Jonathan David. You mentioned he's a bit more of a 10 apparently. He's moving into a bit more of an attacking midfielder, sort of center forward role. So that might open the door for him to start, which I'd be very happy with. And that drama around his transfer is just nuts. But yeah, I just think Canada's a bit of a better fit for him. And he's been here since he was a year old. So maybe, and you look at the guys on Toronto FC, which we're not going to touch on that New York game because I'm not going to go on a rant. You look at who's on that team, and Liam Fraser, you look at Jaden Nelson, Jonathan Osorio, Richie Larea, and those are 4 very key players on the future of the Canadian men's national team. And I see that as being incredibly helpful in recruiting him to join Canada. And we don't really have an under-23 striker apart from David. So I could see them calling him up for potentially the World Cup Olympic qualifiers, because I think that's what he said he'd make his decision on, is whether or not he had a shot and whether or not X team qualified. But it'll be really interesting to watch, and go check out my article if you want to find out a little bit more about Io, because he's a very interesting kind of case study in the fact that he is eligible for 3 different national teams. But let's move on from soccer because we need to hear from Aiden a little bit more. So let's talk about basketball, which is something he loves just as much as soccer.
No, basketball. No, okay. Soccer is definitely below basketball, 100%. I know basketball. I know basketball.
That's true. That's true. Let's start with Lou Williams because Louie boy,
Boy.
come on. For those of you who aren't aware of the Lou Williams situation, he asked for an exemption to be able to leave the bubble to deal with some sort of issue. He was granted it, and then pictures surfaced of him at a gentleman's club in Atlanta. So he's now being forced to quarantine for, I believe it was 10 days.
Yeah.
Rightfully so, because what are you doing?
Didn't he go to a restaurant as well or something for like takeout?
Wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me to see him have gone to a party.
I saw on Instagram this like random guy posted a photo of like the restaurant's food, that the restaurant that he went to, and this guy posted a picture of his food, and he captioned it like, "Yeah, Lou, it was worth it." So, yeah, no, I found that pretty funny actually.
That was a mistake, to say the least. I believe he will be eligible for their games. He might miss a couple. I can't remember off the top of my head. But, yeah, that happened and definitely shouldn't have, and is just putting everybody else in the bubble at risk, even though it has held up until now. So that's a positive situation. Let's talk about the Raptors instead of Lou Williams going to a strip club. Raptors look pretty decent in their scrimmages. I don't know how much you guys watched the games. I thought they looked really good in their first game. They're comfortable. Marc Gasol looks amazing. He's got hair, which I don't know why he's never had hair before, because he looks way better with hair. He's also slimmed down a lot, which good for him. Hopefully that extends his career a little bit, but they've looked great. Serge Ibaka is Serge Ibaka and nearly got in a fight again. So good for him. He's in mid-season form. What did you guys sort of think about the Raptors scrimmages?
I watched a little bit of the Rockets game, and I mean, they look good. Got in most of their guys to play. Lowry looked good. I saw that one highlight hitting the buzzer beater before halftime there. So that was good. Ibaka looks really good. Van Fleet, from what I saw, looks pretty good too. So I think, for all of these teams, it's just about getting back into the swing of things. And the Raptors in their first game, that's a tough team in the Rockets playing against James Harden, and they looked really, really good there. So, I'm sure that Nick Nurse has a good plan for them, and I think that, he can whip them into shape pretty quickly. And yeah, the Raptors are going to be dangerous right off the bat. I think, going into their first series, I think they could, depending on who they play, I think they could get off to a really good start, and hopefully momentum carries on for them. But yeah, so far in the scrimmages, besides from the loss to the Phoenix Suns, they look pretty good.
Yeah, I haven't watched too much of it. I've caught a little bit here and there, but I haven't watched like any full games or anything like that. But yeah, everything that I've seen and heard is pointing towards a very strong start, and them kind of not really showing a ton of rust and being able to get back into the swing of things, which is big, because that's really what's going to make and break the beginning of these tournaments, and is basically who can come back quickest. And whether that's hockey, whether that's even baseball or whatever sport it is, even with CPL coming up, you can include that as well. Who can come out of the gate quickest, because that could probably decide the rest of the season. If you start slow and get caught behind the 8 ball, it's going to be really tough to make up that ground and come back.
Yeah, I agree. Their first game is August 1st against the Lakers, so we're like 3 days away from that.
Not the easiest of starts.
No. Not the easiest to start, but you'll get right back into the swing of things.
Exactly.
And we'll see if Anthony Davis is healthy, because I think he had an eye issue. But he was getting that checked out last night, and he might play today in their scrimmage. So who knows? But yeah, basketball's getting up again, and I don't know. There's not really much else to say around the NBA because they're still scrimmaging. The bubble's holding. We mentioned Matthias Thybulle's vlogs last week, and they're still sick. JaVale McGee started putting up vlogs as well, so you can go and watch those if you really want to see inside the bubble. Casimir Kaskisuo is doing it in the NHL. So
Really?
yeah,
Huh.
they're okay. I think he could use a little bit of editing help, but it's
I'd be
interesting
happy
to
to
see
do
behind
that.
the. Yeah, hey, message him. I'm sure I'll have you do that. But yeah, I don't know. I think what these guys are doing in the bubble and vlogging and doing all that stuff is really cool to see just behind the window. Let's go to a league that doesn't have a bubble, so no opportunity to vlog the bubble in the MLB. It hasn't exactly gone smoothly the first week or so of games. That's probably putting it a little lightly, considering 14 Miami Marlins plus an extra 4 yesterday tested positive for the coronavirus, and they're having a mini outbreak, and it's been less than a week. But what do you guys think of this Marlins situation? Is it going to shut down the league, or what's happening here? Because this has not gone well for the MLB at all.
I think so I saw like the report when it came out when they were playing the Phillies before their final game of the series. I think heading into the game, the Marlins knew that they had guys that had tested positive for the virus, and they allowed them to play. But more so, they let the Philadelphia Phillies know that they had guys that tested positive, and the Phillies agreed to still play. How does the league let that happen? Are you kidding me? Like, you're testing these guys for the virus. They test positive, but you still let them play? I don't get it. Like no. I think the Marlins should be fined. I think honestly the league should find themselves for how stupid that was. Like, it's awful. I think the Marlins might get canceled, to be honest. Like, they have so many guys. I think it's up to 18 now, right? 18. So, and two of those guys are coaches as well. So, I wouldn't be surprised if the Marlins have to get shut down this year. And I think teams are afraid to play in the Marlins Stadium now. I think there was one team that opted not to go. I forget which team it was, but I think they said yesterday they said no, we're not going to go to Miami to play. So yeah, it's awful right now, and I do think the MLB season is going to continue, but I don't know how much longer it's going to last. But I do see the Marlins having to, I guess, drop out.
Yeah, it's for sure shocking that it's a Florida-based team that has had all these issues. I'm stunned that a bubble, not having a bubble in a team in Florida has resulted in this issue. But if you look to the MLS, and they had two teams that decided to pull out because they had similar numbers in terms of coronavirus cases, and you look at what happened there and the successful tournament that they've been able to have since then without those teams. And I wonder if it is a legitimate possibility that the MLB could pull the plug on the Marlins this season. It would make the most sense in terms of just trying to get the season back on track. But I wonder if that's even a possibility. I don't know, given the language of all the contracts and whatnot that have been signed. I don't know if that has to be a Marlins decision, or if the MLB can tell them that they're not playing. So from that point, I'm sure it's very, very messy. But yeah, I feel like this was an inevitability, especially with a Florida team not having a bubble, having, to be honest, fairly loose guidelines as to what you can and can't do as the season's going along. And it's just kind of how fast it did happen. It was about like not even a full
Less than a week,
and
yeah.
we've already hit this. Like, yeah, like Florida's breaking some records, but even this one was a little bit faster than I expected.
Yeah, that is one way of putting it. I'd feel really bad if I were a Blue Jay because you could be safely in Canada hiding from all this stuff, but instead you get to play two teams from Florida.
No, thank God they're not coming here, though. I'm happy that the government said no.
They made the right choice.
Yeah.
That's true. That is true. I do want to ask you guys, though, it is a bit of an interesting situation with MLS. Like, you compare MLS and the MLB and how two teams tested positive, like a bunch of guys. I think it was 10 on FC Dallas, maybe went up to like 11 or 12, and then 8 on Nashville SC, which again might have gone like up to 10 because I think there were 2 positive tests after they left the bubble. But they were also in a bubble and they weren't traveling. And that is going to be an issue when you look at the heat map of where coronavirus is in the States, and it's everywhere. I don't see this season finishing. I said, I think last week, I give it 2 weeks, and
Ooh.
I'd be surprised if they're still going. That was my little hot take from last week, and
Right.
it might be my first one that could be correct
Yeah.
ever. So we'll see what happens there. Let's move on from the Marlins and the unbelievable stupidity there and talk about the questions around Montoya, Blue Jays manager. I don't know if you guys saw the result of the game that Ken Giles went down, but it was very apparent that Giles was not doing well and not healthy, but they kept him in. Are you guys currently asking questions of Charlie Montoya, or do you have faith in what he's doing right now?
I mean, to be honest with you, like, I haven't liked Montoya since day one. To be honest, I didn't think he was the right guy to bring in. First of all, there was a guy who worked in the Houston Astros. So I guess maybe, yeah, he was on the Houston Astros. So maybe looking back on it, maybe it's not a good idea. But but there was a guy who I really liked from the Astros that I wanted them to get. But yeah, Montoya, like, I'm always questioning, like, whether it's the lineup that he puts out or the pitchers that he brings in the matchups, etc. As for the Giles thing, like, it's tough to tell. I'm sure the medical staff handled it well, like, even though we might not think that. I'm sure, the Jays are obviously doing a good job with that stuff. Giles is their star closer, and they want to keep him healthy, especially right at the beginning of the season, right? So, yeah, I guess going back to Montoya, like, I don't know if I see him leading this Jays team to a World Series. I think he was mostly brought in to help with the young guys' development because he works really well with player development and prospects. So I don't know if he's ultimately going to be here when these guys are making that World Series push. But as of right now, I'm comfortable with him, I guess. I'll say that. I'm comfortable with him.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat where definitely a questionable decision, but it's early on this season. Last year was essentially a write-off season. But you got to start picking up the ball here. You can't keep making those mistakes. You can't keep making those decisions, which hamper the team's ability to win. And we'll see what happens from here on out, but it's not a positive start for Charlie Montoya by any means.
Yeah, maybe that changes with Nate Pearson making his debut today as we're recording. So what do you guys sort of see Nate Pearson doing today, and how do you think he's going to perform in the long run in general?
Perfect game.
Perfect game. That'd be something.
No, like he's a top prospect, and you need to kind of level your expectations for what's going to happen. Like, not everybody is going to come into the league and set the world on fire, right? So it's just kind of keeping those expectations realistic and just kind of enjoying things. Like, we're seeing the future of the Jays right now, especially with Pearson on the mound tonight, and just kind of enjoy it. If he's fantastic, awesome. If he isn't, don't write him off by any means yet. This is his first career start in the big leagues. Like, let's give the guy some time. Let's not overly kind of write every storyline either in advance or write him off because of one bad performance. Let's just enjoy it for what it is tonight.
I think like, even in his first exhibition game against the Red Sox, he didn't look good in the first inning. I think he gave up 4 runs, and I think that included a home run. So, I saw some people writing him off right there, and, like, are you serious? Like, this guy has, the sky's the limit in terms of potential for him. He's been their number 1 prospect for 3-4 years now, so he's been, on the radar. And I think tonight, what I want to expect from Pearson is, just a decent outing. I hope he goes at least 4 innings. 5 would be great for me. I'm kind of expecting a similar performance to what Tanner Rourke did last night. 5 innings pitched. I think he only gave up 3 hits. I don't know if Pearson's going to be that good. If he is, then wow, good job, Pearson. But if he can give up like averaging 1 hit per inning, I think that's solid for Pearson, and hopefully he proves me wrong and goes even further in the game. Hopefully he lives up to Kyle's expectations and throws maybe the first ever perfect game in a MLB debut.
I would temper my expectations there. But he does have some promise. He can throw over 100,
Oh, yeah.
which is an asset. I don't think you could say throwing over 100 would never not be an asset, but you know what I'm saying. Let's talk about another prospect in Bo Bichette, because he missed a game recently and there wasn't really a reason given.
I think he has a hamstring injury.
Is that what
I
it
think
was?
he's dealing with
Okay.
like a lingering hamstring strain.
Yeah,
I
I
believe.
think they said like he tweaked it in warm-ups or something, and that's why he was a late scratch. But even then, it was a little bit sudden, but
Yeah.
all those soft tissue injuries are such a big issue in such a short, compact season, playing day in, day out, and with the only being 60 games, you need to really be careful with those things, and rushing him out or pushing him a little too far, like we kind of saw with Ken Giles, can result in something much, much worse. So kind of dealing with it in the short term rather than let it become a long-term issue. I like the decision making there, even though it did give us all a bit of a heart attack.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
But hey, his replacement, Teoscar Hernandez, has looked really good in that leadoff spot, hitting 2 home runs in his first start leading off. So he's been good. I've liked him. I've liked Danny Jansen in the 3 games he's been in. He's looked very good. Vladdy seems to be doing okay. Any other guys? Lourdes looks okay. I know he was dealing with the injury to start off, but Gurriel's been pretty good too. So I like how they're doing this year. They, in my opinion, they should have won every single game in the Rays series. They blew the second game because they brought in Rafael Dolis, I believe, too soon.
Yeah.
And then the third game, like extra innings, they had a 4-0 lead. Like you should win that game. And then honestly, you win the first 2 games against the World Series champions. I know they don't have Juan Soto, but that's still pretty impressive to me. So I like how they've done so far.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. Let's hit the rest of baseball, then we can leave the next call if we have enough time, or we don't have enough time in this call for hockey. The Phillies-Yankees game was postponed because the Phillies didn't get test results back in time. So that's, I guess, not ideal. But they subsequently all came back negative, so that issue's gone. But it continues the trend of Major League Baseball teams not getting results back in time. So I don't know if that becomes something that's a bigger issue in the long run, but it'll be something to watch out for. I don't really think we need to touch on that. But finally, Joe Kelly, the legend himself, Joe Kelly.
Okay.
All I can say is thank you.
Yeah.
They tried to take their heads off.
Bro, really?
I'm just kidding.
I don't know. Are you?
Last night, Joe Kelly was pitching for the Dodgers against the Houston Astros, and he attempted to hit Alex Bregman and missed because Bregman matrixed the ball and then mocked Correa. So that was something. I saw a lot of baseball fans online pretty happy about that because they're not really forgetting about the Astros' little garbage can drama, cheating scandal, which you mentioned earlier, and that you wanted to bring in the garbage banger to coach the Blue Jays.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know about that decision.
Right, yeah.
But
I don't know if he was I think he might have been in the minor league system, to be fair. So, but still.
Okay, well, whatever. What did you guys think of this Joe Kelly situation?
I mean, I didn't really expect anything less, to be honest, because they're playing the Dodgers. It's their first game playing the Dodgers. So, yeah, I don't think Kelly should go for the head, obviously. Go for the lower abdomen area. That would be better. But yeah, I don't blame him for doing it. I think the mocking thing was pretty funny. And geez, just seeing Alex Bregman's face after he dodged the baseball, he looked like so terrified. I just loved it. I really loved it.
It really was good, and it's so perfect that it's Joe Kelly of all people too. After in quarantine, the viral video of him missing this giant net, breaking his own window, and then he goes out and almost takes off Bregman's head off. Like it's just too perfect.
Yeah, I did see one little theory online that video was set up so that he could then throw at Bregman in Korea, which I think is hysterical. I don't know about how real that would be, but it would be really funny if he thought that far in advance. I think the Astros need to get used to this because it's not going to stop with the Dodgers, especially not with Kelly. And honestly, it wouldn't even surprise me if it happened again today.
It will. I think it will.
Yeah, so Astros, keep your head on a swivel because you're going to need to. And we did have our first bench clearing brawl last night, which wasn't a brawl. It was just two teams sitting 6 feet apart from each other. So I guess that at least they're following social distancing, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really. Yeah. I don't know.
There was an argument. So like it wasn't in the Astros game, but I think it was a Pirates game last week. I saw it on MLB's Instagram. The manager got thrown out. He comes out, puts on his mask, and the umpire starts walking towards him, and he pulls out his mask. I just found it so funny. Like that's 2020 wrapped up right there.
The best part of that video was the fact that the umpire's mask was broken, and he couldn't put it on the other ear the entire time.
Yeah,
that was fun. Yeah, so MLB is sort of adapting, but not really. If you really want to be entertained, just follow like Jeff Rosenthal and all the insiders.
Ken Rosenthal.
What? Who did I say?
Jeff Rosenthal.
Jeff. Where did Jeff come
Jeff
from?
Passan and Ken
Jeff
Rosenthal.
Passan. That's right.
Jeff Passan.
Yep.
Yeah. So I guess Jeff, and you can follow Rosenthal as well. So I'll transition like that.
Nice.
But yeah, following a lot of these insiders and reporters' Twitters right now is quite entertaining as they just absolutely freak out at the MLB and everything that's going on. But we'll move on from that. And after this small break, we will talk NHL and some controversial opinions that Mr. Celphant has about the Leafs lines.
We'll see.
All right. Let's move on from the Corona Fest that the MLB is and instead talk about the NHL, which chose the best country in North America to host games in Canada. Let's start with the John Chayka drama because that has been a situation and a half, to say the least. It's basically been the Arizona Coyotes, I'd say subtweeting because they kind of were John Chayka, and Chayka then firing back kind of. And this entire situation is nuts. Basically, the gist of it, from what I understand, is Chayka was offered a position at another team or another opportunity, as he called it, and he didn't inform Arizona that it was a hockey opportunity. Arizona then found out it was a hockey opportunity, and when he said he wanted to leave, they said no, and he said, "Too bad, I quit," and then quit. Just before everything started. We don't know which team it was that did this. We do know it wasn't Buffalo, based on the numerous reports from a ton of different reporters and insiders. But what did you guys think of this situation? Because it has just been wild following all of it.
Well, clearly, I think, in my opinion, I think John Chayka is a pretty decent GM. I liked, ever since he came into Arizona, I think he's done a good job, like through the draft, getting guys and making Arizona somewhat of a competitive team. And then obviously the Kessel thing last year was big for them. But I don't know. It's a weird situation. I don't know what to make of it just because we don't have like all the details. We don't know exactly what's going on behind the scenes. I am kind of surprised that Chayka did quit though. I guess maybe he just didn't like, being in Arizona, or he didn't get along with the management. It seems like they didn't have a good relationship going for quite a while there. It did throw me off guard, to be honest. But yeah, maybe there was a team that he preferred to go to, and he was considering it. But I don't know if that news is going to break later on as to what team it was. But I'm sure that John Chaika will be a GM with another team um, in the future at some point. He's still obviously very young, and he's very talented. So I think he can still be a GM in the league, just not now.
I think that the relationship between the two was good. It's just that he got offered, I believe I saw this somewhere. I'm not sure if it's been confirmed or not, that he was offered 3 or 4 times his
Oh, the money.
salary
Okay.
in Arizona to work at this other team or franchise or whatever. Um,
I can't really blame
so
him for that, though.
yeah. And Murillo, who owns the Coyotes, liked Chayka, and I think this was sort of like he wasn't fond of this move, which has sort of come out in the press releases and everything like that. Kyle, what did you sort of make of this entire situation?
Yeah, it was surprising to me just because of what you just mentioned there, the relationship or seeming relationship between Cheka and the new owner Murillo there, who was sold on the vision of the Coyotes by John Cheka. And now all of a sudden, all of that has gone down the drain. And I'm sure everything there in management right now, all the way up, is not very pretty. I'm personally not huge on John Cheka as a general manager. He's made some fine decisions, but on the whole, I feel like his drafting has been subpar. Free agency hasn't been fantastic. Some of the trades and whatnot have been questionable. He's done a great job with goaltending, but some of the other stuff has been a little bit questionable. He's not this analytics god like everybody thinks he is. He's a microstats guy, and that kind of has some questionable validity to it. But given everything that we know, or is rumored at least, I won't say no because we don't really know anything. The salary that's been rumored, that was part of it. The rumored position as being part of an analytics kind of head of multiple different sports for a big organization that owns multiple teams. I know in 31 Thoughts, I believe Elliot Friedman said maybe New Jersey was a potential one because they have the Devils, they have Crystal Palace, they have one or two others, I believe, as well.
I think they have the Sixers, 76ers.
Yeah, that's right, the Sixers. So there's a couple interesting things there, but I think this has probably gone down worse than anybody there could have imagined, whether you're the Coyotes or you're John Chayka. Having this kind of a messy split in any professional sports is not a good look given how much people remember. And yeah, it's just not a good look for anybody involved, the Coyotes and kind of their response, or John Chayka leaving just before the play-in start in a team that he's primarily built using his ideologies. So just a very weird situation, and I feel like we'll understand more of the decision-making once we get more information. But as it stands now, it's been really vague. There's been talk of a situation that made it unable to stay for Chayka and being called a liar, cheater, quitter, whatever. And then there's obviously the overlooming investigation into the Coyotes and the prospect stuff there. And it's just very, very messy. And the timing of it couldn't be worse.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that draft pick or potential draft pick testing and all that stuff, and what the NHL does around that, and whether Chayka gets in trouble for that as well as the Coyotes, or if it's sort of gets swept under the rug. That's going to be something the NHL is going to have to really think about. And another thing they're going to have to think about is how soon can Chayka join another NHL team? Because he did quit, and I don't know what the sort of rules around that are in terms of what it means for contract or what it means for potential employment in the NHL. But yeah, it's just really weird. I've seen a lot of people say that it's going to be interesting to see what information comes out over the next couple of weeks. And frankly, pretty much nothing has. So maybe we find out in the longer term future, or somebody's just holding on to something to just blow up Twitter. Maybe Elliot Friedman's going to put it in 31 Thoughts, which this week had a ton of really good stuff in it, particularly around Taylor Hall and what is up with him. He had a meeting. This is sort of where all the Chayka stuff started. He had a meeting with ownership, as well as I think it was the AGM who's now taken over, and the owner's son, I think as well was there, but Chayka wasn't involved. So that was really interesting. They did, I believe, offer him an initial contract, which was I think like 8 years. If they can even offer 8, I'm not sure if they can with the trade. But again, it's looking like Hall's not going to make very much money. Where do you guys sort of see Hall ending up?
I'll let Kyle go first on that.
I just given the flat cap and everything involved, I don't really know where he's going to go. Arizona kind of makes the most sense because they already have his cap space kind of made out. I don't really know what other opportunities there are going to be for him, but I think in that 8 million range is probably what he will get. Looking at some of the contract projection models, Evolving Wild has him on a 5-year term, like we saw with that offer made by the Coyotes, that the 5-year term, 7 mil on a 5-year term for their model, it's in and around 8.2 million. That kind of makes a little bit more sense. I don't think he's going to get this massive contract that he probably was anticipating, just because an injury-shortened year last year and then a bit of a disappointing one this year, both in New Jersey and Arizona. So I think that's brought his asking price down quite significantly. But yeah, something in that kind of medium-term range in that 4 to 6 years and in and around that 8 million is probably where he ends up.
Yeah, because when you look at, sorry to cut you off, but when you look at his numbers this year, as you might have mentioned, sorry, I lagged for a bit. You look at their numbers and it wasn't a drastically different season in terms of his advanced stats. It was just different in terms of his point totals.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see if a more analytics heavy team in Arizona potentially does something, understands that and tries to get a discount, but who knows? Aiden, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with Kyle with the around $8 million a year, but I don't know if he's going to take a longer term contract. I feel like he might take like a 2-3 year deal potentially. I think that he wants to really prove himself and like bet on himself in some way. He might take less money and less term. Hall hasn't been the same player he was when he was like MVP caliber in New Jersey. So, he's obviously been injured for a bit and hasn't had the best year in Arizona. So I think, maybe a team like, I don't know if I want to say like maybe a team even like Minnesota or something, like some team that is still battling for a playoff spot or is a playoff team and has the cap space to do it. I don't see him going to like a big team. Like I know there was rumors earlier this year, like what if he goes back to Edmonton? I don't see anything like that happening just because, cap space. But I think a team that wants to win now and has the room to do it will go after Hall. So yeah, maybe a team like Minnesota potentially. They're still hanging in there. They might surprise some teams in round 1 against Vancouver. They might. They still got pieces. I could see them going after him.
I see Montreal being a very good fit for him. They have a ton of cap space coming up this offseason. I think it's like 20 million or something. It's like really like a ton. And I don't think they have many pieces to bring back, and they could really use a dynamite forward, which they haven't really had for a while. But maybe he does stay in Arizona. Maybe he likes it there. I don't know if he wants to go to a massive hockey market like Montreal. I don't know what the tax situation is like in Arizona, but he probably might make more money there as well. I know in Montreal and in Canada in general, the tax rate's a lot higher. So maybe that factors into his decision. But I think it's going to be one of those teams where they're competitive, but they're not insane.
Yeah.
Because all the insane teams don't have any cap space.
I agree.
Whether it be a Minnesota or an Arizona or a Montreal. It's going to be one of those kind of clubs, unless some sort of team manages to make an insane move and bring him in for really cheap on like a long-term contract or really expensive on a short-term contract. Uh, who knows? But that's going to be an interesting contract to watch, as well as the Alex Pietrangelo contract, which is ending this summer because St. Louis brought in another defenseman for some reason this offseason and then signed Falk to a massive contract. But yeah, that was a mistake. Who knows? Maybe they see something that we don't and know something that we don't, but
I doubt it.
I doubt it as well. Let's move on to Seattle, because in the time frame since our last podcast, Seattle has announced their name, and I love it. I don't know what your two thoughts are on this, but they've gone with the Seattle Kraken. Their logo is really cool. It's like a little S with a red eye, and the S has like tentacle through it. I think is the best way to describe it, which I like a lot. Their secondary logo is really cool as well, with an anchor designed with the Space Needle as part of it. But what do you guys think of Seattle's name and the entire logo and all that stuff?
Yeah, I think I really like it. I like the jersey. I like the colorway of the jersey. It's very like unique from all the other NHL teams' colorway. I guess, right away when I saw the jersey, I wasn't too sure about it. I feel like there was a lot of like blank space on it. I thought they could have done something more like at the top of the jersey, especially. Just like maybe even like a simple line like for like by the shoulders. But then looking at the jersey on like jersey swaps, like it looks really good on a player. And, the font I really enjoy as well. And I think the biggest thing that caught everyone's attention is the way that they promoted it and the videos that they showed on their Instagram and Twitter accounts with the boat and in the ocean and all that stuff and the goal horn. And I think that was amazing. It's really a great way to welcome in a new team and the new name. And I think Seattle really did a great job of marketing, and it definitely gave them a lot more followers as well. So shout out to Seattle, and I like the name. Hopefully they can get some good players.
Yeah, I'm fully on board with the Kraken. I have been the entire time the past 2 years on NHL. My expansion team name has been the Seattle Kraken, hoping for it.
Wow.
And it came to fruition, so I'm super happy about that. And yeah, everything about the branding has been fantastic. I like that they pulled from the kind of Seattle navy blue, but also was not exactly copying the rest of the Seattle teams, going with that light blue, the hint of red as well. Looks really good. I also like the logo and the fact that they went with the S logo on front in homage to the original Seattle Metropolitans. I like that as well. I hope that we get a Seattle Metropolitans alternate jersey at some point and get that crazy barbershop looking logo at some or jersey and logo at some point. I hope we see that. But so far, Seattle's done everything fantastic. Whether you look at their management team, the hirings they've made there, the diversity there as well, the branding of the team, the logo, everything they've hit out of the park so far. And now it's just a mad sprint until the expansion draft.
Yeah, they look like a really good team for the NHL. A very forward-thinking group, which is really positive, and they got the wikis behind them as well. So they've got a ton of experience in terms of making NHL franchises and franchises in general successful. But yeah, hopefully they don't take too many good Leafs players in the expansion draft. But who knows? I think that's next summer, correct?
Yeah, next summer.
So we'll have a pretty insane 2021, I guess, is the best way to put it, because expansion draft and potential Olympics and every sport trying to catch up, it's going to be nuts. Let's talk about the most watched hockey games last night, or exhibition hockey games on Sportsnet last night. As Chris Johnson just tweeted, the games last night had a 4.3 million Canadian viewers. So that's insane.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So that's hockey's back is probably the best way to put that. I don't know if you guys have any reaction to that audience.
I mean, everybody's just been dying for hockey.
Yeah, those are playoff numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody's pretty desperate for it at this point. And it being the Leafs, Habs, Calgary, Edmonton probably helped a lot, considering they're two pretty big rivals. But
Mm-hmm.
what did you guys think of the Toronto Montreal game? How did you think the Leafs played?
Jeez, I can't believe we're talking about this.
I
This
know.
feels weird. Jeez. Okay. First of all, thank you, Leafs, for not causing me any stress last night. It was a good way to kind of ease into to the playoffs. I think they played well. Obviously, couldn't have asked for a better start with Mikheyev and that 2-on-1 with JT. And then the penalty kill. Geez, 2 shorthanded goals by Kerfoot, and that's really really good. Or sorry, one for Kerfoot and one for Riley. Um, I thought Robertson looked pretty good. He's very fast out there. You can see his speed right away. He looked a little bit nervous, and he obviously got a penalty as well. But I think it's just first game. He's obviously got a little bit of nerves, but I think he looks good. I hope he stays in the lineup. Freddie looks solid, which is a good sign. Defensively, I didn't mind the way they played. I think they did a really good job of protecting the net and collapsing around Freddie, clearing any loose pucks. And then I think the one thing, Dubas touched on it. I don't know if you guys saw, but his interview before the game, just retouching on, we want to hold on to the puck for as long as possible. And then once we give it up, we want to get it right back. And they just want to have puck possession for most of the game. I think they did a very good job of that. It reminded me a lot of Sheldon Keefe's first game in when they played Arizona. So, if they can keep that momentum rolling, then I think, Columbus might be in a little bit of trouble here.
Yeah, the main thing that stood out to me was just the pace of the game and the contrast of the pace in the Leafs Habs game versus the earlier one, Pens and Flyers. That one seemed a lot more like an exhibition game getting back into it, but both the Leafs and the Habs came out of the gate pretty hot and looked pretty good. Obviously, the Leafs were able to convert more, but the Habs looked decent. Their power play looked awful as per usual. But yeah, no, it was impressive. Obviously, just getting everybody back out on the ice in a game environment is big, and just kind of seeing what you can draw from that small sample. The hot start of that second 1B line, I feel like calling it a second line is kind of doing it injustice.
Yeah.
The top line with Matthews and Nylander didn't look amazing, but they had some individual flashes. The third line looked really, really solid. Kapanen had a bit of a rough one at times. It seemed like it took a little bit for him to get into the game, but Robertson looked solid after a bit of a shaky first period. Kerfoot looked incredible. And seeing the fourth line be effective as well. I think it was a very solid game from the Leafs, what you would essentially hope for in the one exhibition. And it's going to be interesting to see what the final lineup decisions are come. What is it, Sunday that the first game is against Columbus? So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just a couple big decisions to make there in the lineup.
Definitely. And we saw that today in the lineup that was released or the practice lineup that was released, where instead of having Gauthier as the extra forward, they had Engvall. And Aiden had a bit of a hot take before this, although he didn't know Robertson was still in the lineup. I will give him that, saying he wasn't really fond of Engvall being in the lineup.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think Goat should be the extra forward. I think Engvall, he's just very useful in the penalty kill, as well as being a bit more talented than Goat in terms of on the puck. But ultimately, it's going to be Keith's decision. We're going to have two centers for sure on that fourth line, and either Goat and Spezza or Engvall and Spezza. But they have some serious depth. And last night kind of showed it. What did you guys sort of think of Barry and how he played? And what did you think of Price as well?
For Barry, I didn't notice him too much, which is a good thing. I think that's what Mike Babcock said a lot, actually, when he was still the coach at Leafs. If he doesn't notice you, then you're playing well. So, I think Barry looked okay. Good getting the puck up the ice, had a few rushes. Didn't make too many defensive mistakes. I know there was a couple, but honestly, like it's kind of what I expected from Barry. You know, he needs to bounce back. He had a rough start with the Leafs, and you know, it's the first game back as well. I'm sure he's gonna do a little bit better in the next coming games. As for Carey Price, I mean, it's an exhibition game. It's hard to tell with the goalies. I don't know if Freddie or Price were really like giving their full 100% effort into this one. It seems like Price kind of gave up on the first goal, and you know, even that strange Kerfoot goal, it seemed like Price was a little bit out of position there. I think he came out a little bit too much on that one. I think I don't really know what to make of the goalies just because I don't know if they're taking it like as seriously as they should be. I'm sure they're just trying to get back into the feel of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, for Barry, there was the one pretty big defensive gaffe early on in the game, but he kind
Yeah.
of settled in after that. But even then, I want Tyson Barrie to be the Tyson Barrie we saw with the Colorado Avalanche in the playoffs. And that's the guy who's confident, takes the puck, is willing to jump up into the rush, make those offensive plays, and torment the other team offensively. He's not the kind of player that's going to be best utilized if he's laying back playing defensively because, quite frankly, he's not good at that. And that's not what he should be doing. And so I want him to build up that confidence again, to be that kind of player that we see on the power play, which we saw a little bit on the power play, because that's probably where he's most comfortable. But 5-on-5, I still don't think that we've seen the Tyson Barrie that we were expecting. And I hope that we can kind of get that as we jump into these play-ins and hopefully after that the playoffs, because Tyson Barrie with Colorado in the playoffs last year was incredible. The dynamic duo of him and Makar going up against Calgary was just way too much for their defense to handle. And it seemed like every shift it was either Barrie or the next one, Makar, just completely tormenting them in the offensive zone. And we haven't seen that at all from Barrie this year. I hope we can see that once the play-ins start. As for Price, I think it's about what you can expect. Honestly, he was fine. So was Anderson. Anderson was a little bit better, but first game action in a long time, proper game action in a long time. For goalies, it's about a rhythm thing, and the rhythm's been broken for the most part. So it's just kind of finding that once again quickly. And I don't think Price is this game winner difference maker like he used to be. But if he can be fine for Montreal, that's all they can really ask for at this point.
All right. And quickly before we do our hot takes, predict the Leafs lines for the first game against Columbus. What do you think they're going to be?
Jeez.
I think the first two lines are set. So
Yeah,
we'll just
first-
ignore the Matthews, Nylander, Hyman, and Tavares, Marner, Mikheyev. So it's more so the bottom six.
I think you can't split up the third line. I think they played really well in the exhibition game. So I would say they keep Robertson, Kerfoot, and Kapanen together. And I think on the fourth line, you got to keep Spezza in.
Yeah.
They got to keep Clifford in because they acquired him and he's a good physical presence. It really is between Gauthier and Engvall. I think everyone wants it to be Engvall because of the penalty kill, and he's obviously faster. Gauthier is not the greatest defensively. I think I hope it's Engvall. I want it to be Engvall. I don't know if it's going to be. They might just keep it these same practice lines. I think if they want more of a defensive – actually, no. I think it will be Engvall. Engvall, Clifford, and Spezza.
Yeah, I think the top nine is pretty much set at this point. Robertson, even with a bit of a shaky first period, led the team in Corsi for and expected goals in that exhibition game. Obviously, it's a one-game sample, but he really settled in after that first period and looked dangerous at times. So I just can't see him moving off of that third line just because of how complete that third line looks with him in the lineup, and not having Janssen as well kind of replaces that on the third line. As for the fourth line, I think that it's going to be Gauthier. I don't agree with that decision, at least for game one. I feel like Engvall provides more value in terms of his versatility, being able to bump up the lineup, stay in that fourth line center role, bump to the wing, plays on the penalty kill as well, whereas Gauthier only plays 5-on-5. He doesn't kill penalties, and he's not touching the power play in this universe. So I don't really get why it wouldn't be Engvall there because of that versatility. But if you kind of want that size there on that fourth line, I can kind of understand it, even though I don't agree with it. But given the fact that Engvall only got like 5 minutes of ice time last night, and he was the one who started on the fourth line, and Gauthier got 7 or 8 minutes, obviously not a huge difference, but it was clear as the game went on that they were trying out Gauthier more in that fourth line role than Engvall. I do think that it would be Gauthier to start. Obviously, we'll see what happens from there. The lines aren't set from game one, and you have to keep them the rest of the way. I do think we see a bit of a mix and match there, but I do think we'll see Gauthier in the lineup to start.
Yeah, I think I agree with both your takes. It's going to be that fourth line center spot's going to be the real decider between the two. Both players are talented. Both players are big. You know, Engvall is 6'5", and we forget about that. But
90% of that is neck.
that is true. As a fellow
Yeah.
long neck, I understand that. But yeah, I don't know. Like, he's a big body. He knows how to play on the power, penalty kill. He is useful to have, and I like him as a player, even though he didn't necessarily have the most success after signing that contract extension. Let's do our hot takes. If you're not familiar with the show, what we do at the end of the show is everybody gives a hot take, which is any sport, whatever you want it to be. It's just got to be a hot take. We've ranged in success on some of these takes. Considering mine a few weeks ago was that the MLB would be the first league back. But who knows? Do you guys have hot takes prepared?
I do.
You do. All right.
I can think of
hear it.
one. I can think of one.
Okay. I'll go to the MLB Blue Jays talk. Nate Pearson tonight. Kyle was saying perfect game. I was saying 5 innings. Let's compromise a little bit. I think that Nate Pearson is going to have a no-hitter going through 5 innings, but he's going to lose it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So by the time this podcast is up, the viewers will know whether or not it's a hot take or not, and whether or not he was correct.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, Kyle, do you have one prepared?
You know what? I just came up with on the spot, so I'm gonna run with it. Let's go to the Canadian Premier League, because that was one of the notes we touched on here, and I'm going to say that York 9 FC wins the championship.
Okay. I
Is
can
that
see
a
it.
hot take, Connor? I don't know what to make of it.
I feel like that's a hot take, given the fact that Forge and Cavalry are pretty much the 1-2 in the league, and especially were last year.
Yeah, I'm not the most familiar with the CPL. I want to get more into it. But yeah, I'd say that's a hot take.
I feel like they've had a very good offseason. They brought Ryan Telfer back after it looked like he was going to leave to Cyprus. He came back. They've made some really good acquisitions. They solidified the midfield as well. I think that they're going to be very, very strongly suited to challenge Cavalry and Forge. It's going to be tough, but you know what? I'm going to say they get it done.
I'll say it's a hot take just comparing it to the MLS tournament because nobody saw Cincinnati doing well, and they somehow won 2 games. My hot take to wrap us up before we say goodbye until next week, I'm going to go with the Toronto Maple Leafs sweep the Columbus Blue Jackets in the little play-in round thing. I don't know how hot of a take that is, but that's my call. Now saying that Columbus is going to sweep the Leafs instead. And
I feel like calling any sweep in these play-ins is a hot take.
Yeah,
that is true.
I agree.
That is true. Well, thank you. That's what we have to say. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Kyle, so much for joining us.
Thanks,
we really
Kyle.
appreciate it. If you want to check out any of Kyle's stuff, he writes for, which section of Fanside did you write for?
Editor and Leaf.
Editor and Leaf. So you're with Eric Cruikshank as well then?
Yes.
All right. So you can go and check out his work as well as Eric if you really want to over at Editor and Leaf. You can check out his podcasts at the KMN Network as well as
KMN Show.
Or the KMN Show. Why did I say network?
It's all good.
The KMN Show as well as the Green Flag. All his @s will be down below. Thank you for listening. You can check me out on Twitter at CWG Somerville. Check out the MLS Multiplex podcast because we just put up one with Manuel Veth from Transfer Market where we've gotten some really cool MLS is back stuff. Check out the last episode of the Staff and Graph podcast for a little bit because you'll get more insight into why they're stopping. Aiden, check out his Unlimited podcast. I believe he just put one up.
Oh yeah, check that out. We just reviewed every single Marvel movie and we ranked them all. So check out that one. It's an hour and 45 minutes long. It was a good one. So yeah, feel free to check that out at Unlimited Pod on Instagram. All the links are there.
All right. So thank you for listening. We'll be back next week. And peace.